And look at these. I have a lot of big trees in the yard and stuff like this. So as long as I can see or and open the window, I feel closer to nature. I guess I have to have at least the air or something. I'm Minnesota, at least the air a little bit. Then I heard the close the windows, but you know, uh, that's it.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Appreciate y'all being here virtually. Appreciate y'all being here. All right, y'all. Let's go around the spot. If we could just say our names, you could say our pronouns if you would like to. And thinking about this question, do we have any rituals that involve the earth? It could be going on a walk. It could be looking out a window. It could be noticing birds, whatever. Anyone want to kick us off with this check-in? One time, one time.
I can start.
Awesome.
Okay. Um, so Miss Jean, one of the rituals that I have grown to like lately is when the weather permits, it's taking my socks and shoes off and just touching my feet onto the ground,
Okay.
and then put my feet into the grass.
Mm.
And I'm a massage therapist, so especially after I do that, I like to put my feet on the earth
Mm.
and just release.
All right. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Which way do you want to go? Which way? Or you wanna
We can go this way and then circle back. I can go. My name is Kaya. I use she, her pronouns. I guess the main thing that comes to mind for me is I've been starting to get more into plants and having plants in my house and trying to take good care of them because in the past I've been very bad at like taking care of them how I should. So just trying to get in the routine of like paying attention to when they need to be watered and like moved more in the sun and like given more attention than other times. I think is nice for me to touch base with them in the mornings too, as I touch base with myself. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, we definitely need to get some real plants in the car.
Yeah.
Currently, we do not have real plants.
They're nice to have in the space for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Hi, my name is Jamie, and I really love my crystals. I collect them, and I will usually put them in moonlight or sunlight. And sometimes when it rains, I like to let them soak in rainwater. But other than that, I really love going on walks. So
All right.
yeah.
Going on one. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. We can go this one.
My name's Cecilia. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I say what I do outside is I have two dogs, so I'm actually taking them for walks, or I'm taking them on runs with me, or taking them to the dog park. So I spend a lot of time outside with them.
Nice. Appreciate that. Appreciate
Hello, my name is Bethany. I use she, her pronouns. Something I've been doing every day, it's kind of sad, is I'll stare out the window because I'm like trapped in the house all the time. So that's one thing I do every day. And then I probably go on walks weekly. Every weekend I try to go on a walk.
that. Nice. Beautiful.
Just to fairway she her, and I had all these like really beautiful poetic things I did spray, but I haven't really ever done that yet. So what I've really done is been driving with the windows down, even when it's still kind of cold out. But and then wearing outfits that are not warm enough, but I'm like doing things in anticipation for warmer weather. So that's what I've been doing.
Good. Good things. Good things.
I have no pronouns. I'm what you want.
All right. All right.
And we have an apartment that's in, and since it got warmer, I'm on the roof.
That's cool.
Right.
All right.
I like that.
Appreciate that. All right. Gonna go right here.
My name's Angelica, from Portugal. I go on walks a lot, and I just always like sing to like the trees and plants and whatever.
My name is Solomon. You can say one of them is across woods and another one is taking long walks and sitting in the dark.
Mm. All right. All right. Appreciate that. Jakar, you want to say?
Hey everyone, I'm Jakarian Holman, and
enjoy like being amongst people and nature and just relishing in the space and the community of it all. It's really starting to get warm, so I'm excited to go by what we call Spoon Park by Walker Art Garden. Looking forward to walking along that. Walking, I love running around Como Lake, so I'm looking forward to that as well.
All right. Appreciate y'all checking in. I love those check-ins. It's the small things that it's things like what we said that come into our poetry and our poems. And that has to do with what we're going to be talking about today. Can everyone get out something to write with and write on? If you have not already, that would be awesome. Just to have that in front of us. Just to have that in front of us. Absolutely. So,
I apologize. I don't remember one paper.
all right, y'all. So what are we going to be talking about today? What's going to be the theme? So when we think about poetry, and when we think about what poets notice, it has a lot to do with the earth, right? The definition of a poem is a piece of writing that partakes in the nature of both speech and song, right? Speech and song, right? And that song is beautiful things. It's the earth, it's friendships, it's the details of the day, These are the things that poets notice, right? So today we're going to be talking about things that grow, cycles, things like this. And to kind of start that conversation, I have a handout. I'm just going to pass it around. And right now, you don't have to read the entire thing. Don't worry about it. And I'm going to put the link in the chat. Because I want us to just first read the first half. One second, I'm going to put it in the chat for the. So we have a lot to talk about, and the link is in the chat for the Zoom folks. And you should just be able to see it. So what's on the page? What's on the page is a section of a book, The Geography of Genius, by a writer who goes around the world and talks to people and does research around folks who are deemed historically as geniuses. That's not the point of what's on the paper. What's on the paper is writing about a particular kind of tree that we find in southern China. And what I want us to do is just, hey, welcome, feel free to just sit anywhere. And if somebody can hand my hand out, that'd be great. What I want us to do is just soak in the language that's on the page, right? And we were checking in about rituals that involve the earth. And what I want us to do is highlight or circle any word or sentence or language that you like, that you notice, that you have questions about. This is not a poem, but it could influence a poem. The writer is Eric Warner. Just any word choices and languages that stick out. The folks on Zoom, are y'all able to see the document okay? Good? Okay, cool. And then just the first half. My bad if there might be typo. It's very interesting what nature can do. just said that, and it's right there, just look at it out. We have, pencils and- All right, y'all, take a few more moments. Take a few more moments, no need to rush. The geography of genius. All right, y'all. All right, y'all. So we're learning about a tree that's located in southern China called the long soul tree that does interesting things. Is there anyone that would just like to read that first time, real quick, one time? Awesome.
So, just everything at the top
Yep.
here? Okay. His story reminds me of the artist I met a few days earlier. I had asked him about creative destruction. Do the Chinese embrace the concept with the same enthusiasm that we do in the West? He answered my question by drawing a tree called Long Su, found in southern China. The roots, rather than being buried underground, hang in the air. When they are long enough, they touch the ground and sometimes a new tree is born. The new tree doesn't destroy the old one, it grows alongside it. One root can turn into a new tree, yet it is still connected to the old tree. Something new is created, yet nothing old is destroyed.
Mm-hmm. Any notices, questions, things that it made you think about? And that goes for folks on Zoom too. Anything that stuck out, anything that resonated, did it remind you of anything? Things that just things that stuck out, things that you appreciated. Yes.
I just read and think a lot about trees,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually constantly say in my own life, I am the tree of life, right? And so whenever I see about trees, I think about the roots, how it needs to be nourished, be taken care of, and be dug around in order to dig deeper.
Mm-hmm.
So those were the things that I thought of.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's ancient. Like, songs is ancient. This is nothing new.
And we talk about nature and trees, right? Things that happen without human intervention just happen within the ecosystem, right? Anything else that stuck out to folks? How about anybody on Zoom? Anything else that stuck out to y'all? Things that y'all noticed?
When I read it kind of, I don't know if it sounds weird or something, but it made me think about like how, we are connected to spirit, like our own spirits, you know what I mean? Like it's outside of our body, like our body is in reference to our body being the tree, and that or being the roots of that or those of that tree or whatever, and in reference to spirit, like our spirit will always be there whether we're here or not. The spirit will always be there. That's how I connect.
Absolutely. 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 Anyone else? Things that you notice, things that you might have questions about. Things that, yeah.
One thing that stood out to me was the new tree doesn't destroy the old one. It grows alongside it. I thought about like our elders and our youth. The new generation doesn't destroy the old one, but they learn together. There's a development. There's nothing that our elders have gone through is new under the sun. It's just done by a new set of folks.
And this is the kind of material that produces poems, right? So when a poet hears this, they make that connection. They make that connection that nature can tell us a lot about human association or what human association could be, right? So that's a poetic imagination. Absolutely. Anything else that stuck out? Learning about the tree in southern China. Anything else that stuck out? Yeah.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, like with the generational thing, I think of like the conversation that we have, like whether it's through like creative work, through poetry. So people who have come before us, we don't have to kind of like put down like the stuff or the information that has come before us. We can all kind of coexist and create a conversation and maintain a conversation amongst ourselves as different generations and stuff. That's what I kind of took out of it. It's no one has to put each other down. We can work together and continue to sort of build off of a conversation from previous conversations from other generations. We can, and that's what I got out of it.
Absolutely. But particularly in community organizing work, right? We don't have to shame each other as we talk about growing a new world, right? And I think that's such an important conversation, particularly in the spectrum of tactics, right? How do we think about working? How do we think about the way we talk to each other when we have different strategies, right? Because that's very important, right? Very important. Absolutely. Anything else? Things that stuck out before we move on to the next thing.
So I always make connections to the stuff. So this, right, one root can turn into a new tree and it's still connected to the old tree. Nobody's carrying the weight of the tree along. Everybody else got that whole concept of like, oh, Earth is inherently black. Like I think that's what I came to in the same place that like Eric and I forget who else was talking before Eric, but the same kind of journey y'all had. I was like, okay, the Earth itself is just inherently great, but. Anyway, so I made this connection to a Robert Glasper's song, really an Eric, I don't know if it's the speech he did or what he did or what it is, but there's this speech that he does in this song by the Robert Glasper Experiment on Black radio, and the thing he really gets to is like, it's true, and this is direct, this is quoted. Now, it's true that the genius of African culture is surely its repetition, but the key to each such repetition was that new elements were added each go round. Every round goes higher and higher. Something fresh popped off the page or jumped from a rhythm that had been recycled through the imagination of a writer or a musician. Each new installation bore the imprint of our unquenchable thirst to say something of our own in our own way, in our own voice as best we could. The turns of the times began. So I think about this a lot, right, as an artist, especially with this whole, like, this specific time we're in terms of, like, millennials and, like, our grandparents and how that seems to do its thing. And I think a lot about age inside of Blackness and what conversations it keeps us from having. So I think that's what I was thinking about energy, right? So when you grow things, it creates energy, everything creates energy, and that energy doesn't go anywhere. It has to get shifted someplace else. So it made me think a lot about energy, it made me think a lot about age inside of Black culture and stuff, and jazz. But that's everything, so it's not really sure.
It's a way of being located in a community that requires others, right? It necessitates others. So to recap, right, we're learning about a tree in southern China whose roots hang in the air, right? That and when they touch the ground, a new seed is grown without destroying the old tree, right? So it's just a thing in nature that's exciting to learn about, right? Are there any other insights before we move on, things that made you think about, things that you noticed yet?
Are you doing the whole root section or just the top half right now?
Just the top half.
Oh, okay.
Right. Word. So, yeah, let's move to the bottom half of the page. And just again, read it and circle anything that resonates with you, anything that you notice, anything that you appreciate from the second half of the page. And this is from a book, The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wallerden. It's a great. rush. Take your time. And again, all these writers are describing is trees uh, in nature, but they can say so much about human association. Yeah. All right, poets. Is there someone who would like to just read out loud the bottom section one time for the one time? Anyone in the space would just like to read that bottom section from the Hidden Like the Trees by Peter Wollingen. Cool.
I can read it. A good upbringing is necessary for a long life. Acorns and beech nuts fall at the feet of large mother trees. Dr. Suhan Samar, who helped discover maternal instinct in trees, describes mother trees as dominant trees widely linked to other trees. These trees pass their legacy on to the next generation and exert their influence in the upbringing of the young trees. Unfortunately for them, their own mothers do not approve of rapid growth. Rebellion against this strict upbringing is impossible because there is no energy to sustain it. The young trees that overcome all obstacles and continue to grow beautifully, tall and slender, will however have their patience tested yet again. Before another 20 years have passed, for this is how long it takes for the dead mother's neighbors to grow their branches out into the gap she left when she fell. They take advantage of the opportunity to build their own crowns and gain a little additional space for photosynthesis. Their old age.
Isn't that wild that these terms exist in nature? Yeah. Just gotta sit in the language for a moment. Things that folks noticed or heard or appreciated or had questions about. Things that resonated, things that stuck out. Yeah.
Yeah, all obstacles, overcome all obstacles and continue to grow beautifully. It just like reflects like I'm a 30-year-old female, and like me and my mother are going through some things that it definitely has like this tension that exists between my development and my expression into being a person who no longer sees my parent as a god figure. That's something that is like for a person who is relying on that same system themselves. It's new for another being to express and show them that it's time for me to grow. Like, it's time for me to take in this sunshine.
Absolutely, it's hard. Absolutely, appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if it was just me, but this part about 10 years have passed. So this is how long it takes for the dead mother's neighbors to grow their branches out into the gap she left when she fell. Right. That was hard to do. And then it kind of reminds me of how like, I don't know if everybody else has like mine, like when the big mama died and stuff, and it just kind of fell apart. And you know, so I don't know if we're waiting on a new big mama, but like you know, that was a big shoot to fill, you know. about women who have like were born at the tail end of slavery or in Jim Crow period and have, you know, deeper connection to the earth and healing power with their presence, let alone their herbs and all that stuff. So we're just trying to grow out those branches and fill that space.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm gonna go to folks on Zoom, things that resonated, things that stuck out from Peter Walden, they hit like the trees.
Yeah, y'all can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. One of the lines that stood out was, let me see. Rebellion against this strict upbringing is impossible because there is no energy to sustain it. The young trees that overcome all obstacles and continue to grow beautifully, tall and slender, will ever have their patience tested yet again before another 20 years have passed. But this is how long it takes for the dead mother's neighbor to grow their branches out into the gap she left when she fell. I think about generational improvement. Like this whole thing makes me think about generational improvement and going through like trauma. And how much work it takes for someone who may come from a family or have family members that may be toxic or have traumas that they're dealing with that they were unable to cope with in their generation, having to do the work in your time, how much work and effort that takes. And how there can sometimes be like a setback, like there's more to like work against for you. And then I think about the line that says, you know, good upbringing is necessary for a long life. And, you know, just really just the work that goes into trying to create a good life despite having like grown through trauma and stuff. And what can come out of that? Like, what can come out of that process of digging and doing that in the work? Yeah, that's all I got.
Absolutely. Anyone else on Zoom want to share anything that resonated or any questions, things that stuck out?
Even though I don't really need to talk because Eric said everything I was thinking way better than I could have ever said it, but a good upbringing is necessary for a long life. Oh, the whole thing is very like creepy in a sense. Only because like I know how true that sentence is. A good upbringing is necessary for a long life, and like a lot of people do, who like didn't have that. Whether you're talking about like whiteness or like actually having parents or like poverty or whatever it is, like that shit hits different no matter like, but it's always gonna hit. Like it's a whole thing. I'm just writing down what people are saying, really, actually. So like, but I did write down somewhere shackles of learned behavior for some reason. But I think that kind of like, it's almost like a fable. Like, you said this is like a geography book or something? And it feels like a fable that I would read like really young. Like maybe you should still make those books like with the fables in them. Like smooth like 97, maybe 1997-ish, perhaps like that. What it feels like. So it feels like a very creepy thing to read, but I'm not shocked that I feel that way about science. So yeah, so it's it got like very, it was almost like one of those shows like the series of unfortunate events movie, like it's funny for 5 minutes and there's an album and all of a sudden it's like death in June. Like that's how it feels. That's how it feels like in terms of how the flow went. And now I'm terrified, but also like very like intrigued as how this wording is. So if you think about sort of the cadence of it, a good upbringing is necessary to a long life, and then it like goes on and it's like talks about how the mother trees like pass down the generations. It sounds like beautiful and like it sounds like it's gonna be great, and then it's like rebellion against the strict upbringing. And I'm like, whoa, like it feels very Shakespearean almost. It feels very like Macbethy. but in a really great way. Like in the writing, I'm like, this is brilliant. And then like as a reader, I'm like, I'm terrified. And I really like that. So.
Absolutely. Poets are like are similar to sciences because they deal with relationships. In science, you deal with the relationships between organisms, and in poetry, it's like human association. So oftentimes, right, the poets often go to nature and relationships as a place of study, right? So,
Yeah, I was just from a writing point of view. The last person who spoke touched on it, but like anthropomorphizing, like in a big way, and it's really smart because the just learning about this tree, this information sticks so much more because they added, they gave humanity to the tree in a sense. And they, we're used to in science that science is talking about the natural world and other animals almost like it's mechanistic, and we live in a culture that speaks the living world as dead things to profit from. And so adding I would even say that extending that humanity to trees is really great to kind of combat that, and also it just makes the information stick so much more. And I can imagine being a science teacher and being really excited about that, being like, oh wow. So if you just add a story, because we know human beings are driven by stories, and if you had a story to talking about, how a cell, the functions of a cell, or whatever, kids are gonna like grasp it that much more,
Absolutely. Anything else before we move on to the next thing? Yes, this is the actual poem.
So
I wanted to say that I'm just reading these poems. It's like I'm thinking of more of a parental view of it. I guess to say like when I think about I have grown adult kids, and it's just like it's when it's like that separation of when I know that you are grown and you are fully separated from your parent. It's like a whole nother step into life, and it's like as a parent, looking at my children, it's like, of course you're supposed to add to whatever I gave you. You know what I mean? Whatever I gave you, you're supposed to add to that and make it beautiful and continue to grow and have my grandbabies and things like this. And I think of it when I say parental, I'm thinking of it like looking at my children, turn into different people. When your children get grown, they turn into whole different people, and just kind of accepting that it's an add-on instead of something against your original thing. I think that's my parental view of that. Life is a progression, and sometimes children don't understand that progression is also you. You know what I mean? Like when you were a child, I was growing up too. I was adulting, and now that you're adulting, I get to see that. It's kind of like that circle of life thing that that's fantastical.
So what stood out for me is the widely linked to other trees, pass their legacy onto the next generation and exert their influence out into the gap she left when she fell. So what it reminds me of, especially right now, that when my son went down south, he wasn't used to what he seen, and he stayed with some family members, but he said, every time he turned around, everybody was in his business. Like he could go out the door, somebody down the street he didn't even know already knew what he was doing. He was like, I ain't cool with that because that's not where it came from. But what it reminded me of is all these trees linked together. You're passing this down. You have this influence, right? But even now, I'm talking to so many grown women who have so much hurt and pain from their parenting experiences they had, and it just keeps getting passed. And it's like, when are we going to have this conversation about this? When are we going to talk about this? Well, it's not to find fault, but it's to say, hey, everything you did, I love you for who you are, but this is my life. This is the life that, and each one of us have a journey in which we're supposed to take. And I'm still having that conversation with my own mother. Like I'm not a baby. Like she still treats me sometimes like, no, I got grown kids. So it's having the conversations. It's having the conversations. Like when she shuts down on me and doesn't want to talk, I'm like, that's immature. You're gonna have to have a conversation about this.
Absolutely. I love this conversation. So let's have small group conversations. And folks on Zoom, if y'all could talk to one another, that'd be great. Thinking about what we're talking about in this question, have you ever taught a lesson to someone who was older than you? And reflecting on that experience, right? It could have been someone in the family, it could have been a coworker, it could have been someone in the community. Have you ever taught a lesson to someone older than you, and what was that like? What was that lesson like? And did age come into any of it? So just think about that. Yeah, and just talk amongst yourselves. And small. So whoever on Zoom wants to start that conversation.
What do we do? Unmute ourselves? I didn't come to start here, I guess.
Things like that. No, literally, and it's like and then I was so young, so you know, I was like, no, I would spend like maybe 8 years back, yeah, she learned. I mean, I hope so. We don't need to talk about it.
have to do it around me. Think about why. Because like
All right, y'all, take a few more moments, 2 more moments.
So it's like, and they would never do that. So when I was and I did that years ago. I was like, actually not together. No, no, I really feel. That's why I feel a lot harder. I was yesterday. I never done it.
Oh, I mean, not that she did this before, but like what I did here, that meant so much. So, all these lessons that you what has happened that all right, y'all, we can wrap up our conversation. We can wrap up our phenomenal conversation. So, speaking about lessons, speaking about the association we have. All right, y'all, we can wrap up our conversation. That'd be great.
And bring it back.
All right. Yes, bring it back.
Oh, I know. I looked at it and I was like, what is it?
The coffee machine totally does not work.
Okay.
At all. So I'm surprised.
I think this is one that works.
Yeah, so it just, nobody's.
The French vanilla is not.
Yeah, nothing works in the coffee machine. Hot water, it looks beautiful. I got it. All right, y'all. So, let's get a few responses. Just a few quick responses, right? Give your hand back. Word, yeah. So let's get a few responses.
No.
All right. That's
I think once the message gets in there,
yeah. Word, yeah. So what are some things that came to mind when we thought about lessons that we have taught someone who was older than us? And how did that go? Anything that came to mind, anything that folks want to share out real quick? Anything that came to mind, lessons, these lessons that we have imparted on some folks who are older than us. Anything that came out in our conversation?
The need for patience and understanding that everyone needs to be heard.
Absolutely, the need for patience and understanding everyone needs to be heard. Absolutely. Anything else? Anything else? Yeah.
I would say I think I taught my mom stuff about parenting, about herself.
Yeah.
Just like I think my kids are teaching me about parenting, about myself, and about each other.
Absolutely.
And then we kind of like had a debate about whether or not that's actually learning or observing, which I think is synonymous. So we had another debate about that. But yeah, I think it happens all the time. We all have to like teach each other.
Yeah. Absolutely. For sure. All right, y'all. Let's actually dive into some poetry as we move on to the next thing. And it's funny, the connection between geography. So we're going to the south. This poem is called Mississippi Gardens. Mississippi Gardens. Can folks on Zoom in? All right. And I probably should just drop the. Are you? Is it just one? Yeah, it's just one. Yeah, I'm gonna drop the link in the. Can folks see the link in the chat? The PDF. All right, one second. Yeah, yeah. One second. I thought the PDF.
Yeah, I use it. It's
All right. So I'm gonna drop a link, and it's on this link, but you're gonna have to scroll down to find it, but it's there. So it's on that link, but it's a poem that's you gotta scroll down. It's called Mississippi Garden.
see what I decided to
All right. And just circling language that sticks out to us from the poem. Mississippi Garden. If folks on Zoom, did Did y'all find the poem okay? Okay. All right. Take a few more moments. And is there anyone in the space that would just like to read the poem one time? Great. Yeah, brother.
It was over here.
Oh, right. Oh, I got it. Oh, you got it. Nice and loud, whenever you're ready.
Alright. Mississippi Gardens. Slaves, she answers as I sink my fingers beneath the loops. The knees of that blue house dress are threadbare. She wears it on Tuesdays and Fridays when we tend the flowers. Cool weeds ain't a time for talk, she shies. I watch her uproot the creeping Charlie. The fragrant blossoms we protect hug our whole house. Sweet peas were my choice. We barely buy those things for sale in the gardening aisle. Don't make sense to work the earth and not feel it. I wanted those thick cotton gloves, but they stayed on the shelf. You gotta learn the difference between dirt and soil. Sometimes I notice how the ground changes. Denser, darker, moister, a little more red in some places. In social studies class, I learned about crop rotation and how it keeps the land fertile. Mama, what did they used to grow here?
Absolutely, absolutely. This is a poem by Stephanie Pruitt. It is in an anthology called The Ringing Ear, Black Poets Lean South. It's a great resource.
What's it called again?
Black Poets Lean South. The official title is The Ringing Ear, Black Poets Lean South. Edited by Nikki Finney. And this poem is by Stephanie Pruitt. Just a few quick responses from the poem. Lines that stuck out, questions, things that you noticed. Yes.
I'll go real quick. When it says, don't make sense to feel the earth, to work the earth and not feel it, I think about, like, it's gardening in itself. Like, you can't wear gloves. You got to feel the cool of the earth. You got to feel the roots. You got to feel around to know what to keep and what to let go. Like, you got to be connected physically and spiritually to it.
Absolutely, for sure. Anyone else? Things that resonated, things that stuck out from the poem, things that folks have appreciated, that I think like things that stuck out. Yeah, right there. Say that a little louder.
My opinion of it, when she says you gotta touch the earth before you touch soil.
Yeah.
To me, it's kind of like a common base, where you gotta learn. You're not supposed to learn about it, but you gotta learn how things are at an amateur level. Then go to learn the actual way and get what you're doing. Learn the consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in my experience. Absolutely.
See from the experiences. See the experiences that they do.
Yeah.
And teach the next person about what their life is.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I would just preface it and kind of returning back to the world of poetry and so learning how to read poetry as a skill. Like, I guess I was confused by the beginning part. I didn't know what that was or what that meant. I don't know if, I guess what I thought maybe the question at the end was actually the answer at the beginning. Oh, it is?
Boom. Yeah.
That's what I viewed it as. Oh, that would make sense.
There you go. Yeah, so the reason why I love this poem is because the subject mirrors the structure. the subject could be about crops and cycles. And the structure itself is somewhat of a cycle, right? So the first line is in response to the last line. So it's like this actual structure of the poem itself represents what the subject, the concept is about, which is growing and crops. It goes through a cycle, right? Absolutely. So yeah, you're right.
That's that question. I was like, stuff like, what did they grow?
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah. Totally. Totally. Yeah, there you go. See? There you go.
But I think this whole poem is big. Yeah, I think my favorite part is when she said, I wanted those thick cotton gloves on the shelf. No, not even that.
Everyone's not there. Sorry.
Don't make sense to work the earth and not feel it. Yeah, and I felt like that was in relation to the glove, like, might as well feel it. I don't know.
It doesn't make sense to work the earth and not feel it. Absolutely. Folks on Zoom, any insights from the poem by Stephanie Pruitt, Mississippi Garden?
So knowing that it's like full circle in a way, like
Yeah, it's like
that changes the nature of the poem to me. It makes it just more serious. Because when she asked the question, like, so, you know, what were they growing here? I even think about how slaves were growing.
Yeah.
How we were kind of, how we were conditioned and stuff to, you know, to work the land and stuff like that. So, I don't know, just that changes the whole nature of the poem. You know, like that line, the same line when it says, don't make sense to work the earth and not feel it, that stood out to me too, because it's kind of like how you can go through life just existing, just working, and not really tasting life, not really like living life. So that line stood out to me for that reason. As it relates to like labor, like, you know, we can kind of sometimes just work or go through life, just working and not really just not really living life.
Absolutely. So this is what a poem can get us to think about. But this is also what a Black Southern poem between Black women can get us to think about, right? So there's so many levels of this material that is of use to what we can talk about, right? You know, Mississippi gardens, right? Not just gardens, because it could have been called just gardens, but it's Mississippi gardens. That tells us something about the country in the South, particularly, right? Any other insights for folks on Zoom? Real quick? Yeah.
Super quick. So all of these things, but also I just realized I'm gonna find the exact book so I can reference the correct thing. But thinking about Black Southern women, there it is. Okay, so
right there.
Exact has a book called Some Sing, Some Cry, and I never finished it, but I started it a bunch of times, and so I remember the beginning very clearly. And it's, what was it, her grandmother? I want to say it was her grandmother and the daughter, both whose names I do not remember, but now of course I'm gonna go reread it, so I do. And so it reminds me a lot of that, because it was, the beginning is the two of them leaving, I think it was like a plantation that they had been living in, to go like stay in Charleston. So it's like Southern Black, PTE, all of that stuff happening. And so I like kind of imagined it. And if you see the cover of this book, it's like this big, huge sky with like the sun just sitting right here. And the font is in this like rainbow. And so I just see all of that happening. But I think so, yeah, so much about growth. Dirt and soil, I think about like dirt is dirt. Dirt is just there. Soil is a thing that grows stuff. And I think I don't know what you call this when the answer is at the beginning and the question's at the bottom. I don't know what you call that, but it's brilliant and I love it. So I was really glad that somebody else figured that out because I love the question. Okay.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. Any other insights from folks on Zoom? For sure. How about out here? Any other noticings? Things that it reminded you of, questions? Yeah.
There always seem to be like a sort of wisdom in the irony of slave ownership and what has happened today. I saw that expressed through the cotton gloves and not and protecting you from the reality, protecting you from the soil, protecting you from feeling. And just all of the history that we have behind the manufacturing of cloth, of textiles, particularly cotton. Like who taught us, that we need to wear clothes in order to touch the soil. And now he's looking more and more like slaves than anybody with the slave line.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, to play off of that, it kind of reminds me, like, the cotton gloves kind of seems like ignorance. And the dirt and the soil, like, there's good with bad. We can't just wear rose-colored glasses. So that's kind of...
There's so much in this poem, people. There's so much in this poem.
I think what I got out of this is just the luxury that the slave owners had. That everything was blooming and growing off of the backs of the labor of the slaves. And so, like, the last question, Mama, what did they used to go here? So before slavery, what was here?
On indigenous land. Absolutely. Absolutely. And this poem is so intimate, right? On a Tuesday or on a Friday, right? Gets back to the check-in question. What are our rituals that we do with the earth? So these are the things that a poem can capture, the intimate associations that we share with either our siblings, our family members, our co-workers, our friends, and how we describe these things, right? And this poem registers on so many levels, on geography, on gender, on labor, on the earth, on weekly rituals, that we do with our family. So, any other sort of insights before we move on to our own round, right? So let's turn to a blank piece of paper in our writing utensil, if you have them. And let's just sit in all the rich conversation that we had. You want some paper? Please. You want some paper? Sharing this caring cooperation.
Yeah.
All right. So the poet goes to sensory detail, images, sights, sounds, tastes, smells, right? The details of things, right? So I'm going to give y'all a writing prompt. You can use it if it helps, you cannot. But the idea is to think about what we've been talking about. So the writing prompt is, sharing this lesson made me think, made me into, made me see, particularly thinking about the question, the moment when you taught someone a lesson who was older than you, right? And thinking about that moment, right, where you taught someone a lesson, or you divided it when someone taught you a lesson who was older than you, right? But the prompt is, sharing this lesson made me, and then you can just keep writing, made me think, made me into, made me see, made me wonder, made me, notice, made me, whatever. Sharing this lesson, right? And thinking about who's in our lives and who are we sharing lessons with. And just see what comes out. See what comes out. Just take a moment. knowledge, maybe believe. Don't rush. A few more moments, a few more moments, some lessons. Whatever you have is fine. All right, poets, if we could wrap up the thought or the feeling that we have and whatever we have is fine, even if it's just a feeling, and if we could just share what we have so far with someone near us, and share with whatever you're comfortable with. That would be awesome. That'd be great. So just take some time to share share what you have with someone near you. And folks on Zoom, whenever y'all are ready, feel free to share what y'all have
Yeah.
as well. Whoever wants to, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So I wrote one down all forms in my spirit. So I wrote a poem in regards to how easy it is to be a parent, how easy it is to say you don't know about everything. You just rip away their freedom. When our children, they don't come with intention, they don't come in the world with demands, they come free as honeybees. So I wrote my poem basically as the life of honeybees. And I feel like we learn a lot from children because they not even think it's about the world. They think freely. They say what they want to say. They know how to feel it. They know how they feel it. And I feel like sometimes we need to be reminded that it's supposed to be. It's so but I was like, oh, we're gonna keep it to one. But I learned a lot from children. Like I said, they have a very like a lot. Like you know, you watch some children, they literally hurt themselves and they get right at it. Even excuses, some people are like, oh, it's like that's how we go to the back, clean off the corner of the wall, and they're still up. So we have all exactly. But as an adult, we don't do that. We are not that comes down to send it home.
It's not one thing. She drops the conversation. I
don't know. I just find a lot of people watching like being in nature. Like for my 25th birthday, I went on a hike and I don't know. I came off that mountain. I felt like a different person. Just watching nature. I went to Colorado. I was at the Rocky Mountains, and I was on this trail called the Pagan Lake Trail. And it's a really short hike. It's like 2 hours, like 1 hour up, 1 hour down. And as you're like walking up the trail, there's a lot of people down the trail. It was so beautiful, like you're walking up and then it's just well, it was easier going up the mountain than coming down. When I came down, I didn't have the proper shoes to keep it right. And so I was just going up, it was fine.
All right, poets. You could wrap up your thoughts that were on currently. That would be amazing. Yes. All right. So, yeah, as we sort of wrap up this first Black Lives Matter session at the cooperative, I would love to just hear what folks are comfortable sharing, how they feel in the prompt, something that they appreciated just in conversations, whatever folks want to share. Anyone want to start us off? Yeah.
I wrote a poem I'll start. Okay. Sharing this lesson made me learn the difference between soil and dirt, made me toil with the way I approach the earth, because she's always been there, selfless she is, ready and willing to care, waiting for us to remember why we came down here. Today, I remember.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Can we give some snaps to the poet one time? One time. And remind us of the name one time.
Jamie.
Cool. Awesome. Whoever wants to go next, whoever wants to, cool, awesome.
So first I wanted to give you flowers. Thank you for creating this space. Like I just moved here and I've been looking for the creators and I found them. So I'm so appreciative. So I did mine in a poem style, it's a little bit longer. So I'll kind of tell you what it's about. I don't really share my poetry, so this is the first time. So bear with me. My poem is about a life of the honeybee. That's all this reading. Children, so free, so bee, honey, honeybee. Put that down, child. Sit cross lifestyle. Turn that crown upside down, child. You can't, you won't, you aren't. Believe left. Love with limits and say yes. Yes to pain, yes to unwanted pleasure, yes to overbearing pressure. Singing in your head and not out of your mouth. No filtered flowers, just you in your room filled with Minecraft and YouTube. A person built so smooth. Children so free, so deep. Heaven, what have you done to me?
Can you give it up? Appreciate that. And tell us your name one time.
Rashonda.
Thank you for being here. Absolutely. Brother Jackson.
Okay. Sharing this lesson made me ponder, what does it mean to have lived a life veiled in the American flag? It's not like it used to be. People were kinder back then, she says, notably absent of irony. Small town Iowa in the 1950s. Leave It to Beaver and Andy Griffith. That's not a place for me. You know, people like me were being hung back then. She drops the conversation. Embarrassed, perhaps. Grandmother was never one for conflict. To have roots that extend to cornfields and Sunday church, but never to belong. I see through the veil. Lesson 1, I tear it to tatters.
Very good. Very good. Absolutely. Appreciate that. Right here.
Oh, is it on?
Oh, if you want to go right here and then you can. Yeah.
Showing this lesson makes me a better person. Sharing my point of view making me a better version. And maybe being patient at the same time. Maybe being patient is at the same time. Time we have a broken face and again lose my mind. Growing up with the black, growing out to the world class, time we have compromise, time we have mind, time we have devotion, time we have sin, downtime, all right, and feel it all the time.
All right, give it up. Appreciate that. And remind me of your name one more time.
Solid like mine.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. And then,
Mine's just thoughts mostly. But anyway, sharing this lesson made me realize the secret patterns of the earth. The soil, the grandmothers, and the grandchildren, the patterns that separate life from death, the fact that they really aren't separate at all, but codependent. Just like young and old, we need each other. It makes me think about our words. Are they soil or are they dirt?
all right. That's all right. Absolutely. And tell us your name one more time.
Tatiana.
Appreciate that. Gonna go right here.
Alright. Sharing in this lesson made me think of the suddenness of the end. As she lay in the bed, fragile, skinny, meek, far from the woman who would read you while holding rum in her left hand. Her eyes used to cut you, her stance reminded you how little you were. but not this time, her last time. She lay there helpless at the mercy of the natural cycle. She couldn't stop it. Her body and time had become the final judges, and she couldn't stop it. She lay there wishing it had been different, recalling for a last wish. I listened intently on how I could overcome regret. I am more mindful because of her. I share it in her lesson.
There you go. Give it up. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Hey, tell us your name one more time.
Asia.
Appreciate that. Thank you. If anyone else will come yet?
Unless you want to go there first.
Yeah, we can go here and get set. Well, yeah, let me check in. Do folks on Zoom want to share something real quick? Okay, cool. Eric.
Sure. I think I fixed it, so that's fine. Anyway. Dead things make stories no one has to write down. Every eye, every storm, every dimension aligns convergence harmonic in the name of the generations. How much waiting are we gonna do? Standing in the earth that's already ours. Growing is silent, outer, loud, inner. What did you used to grow? Where is your dirt and where is your heaven? Where is your work and where is your reverence for yourself? The kaleidoscope of every ancestor and revolution and something.
Thank you. Yes, yes. And remind us of your name one more time.
My name is Lucy.
Appreciate that. Okay. You want to go to Eric or?
Oh, yeah, I guess I was born somewhere between the years of cotton and the years of moonshine. Like all good slaves, I shut them and smile despite this cavity in the mouth of my bloodline. Like all good slaves, I forget what they do not want me to remember. All I, my mom and sisters know are shadows. Trees with no roots to uphold and people that weather strikes our hurt is the only instrument tepid enough to resound with, but I heard a joy. A better song that soaks even the most rainless of flutes. It seeps through cracks, hugs the soil, and takes hold of our hands. It says all this being gathered in this one tree could be a forest to surrender itself to love.
Can we get something that? Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. Appreciate that. Does anyone else want to share what they wrote? Anyone else want to share? All right. All right.
I'm stand up.
All right.
Share this lesson. Made me feel so honored to be in this space with the energy of ideals, thoughts, and creativity that is a deep well within, rich as the soil, deep as the roots from generation to generation, seed to seed, a tree growing, soaring toward the sky, taking in the rays of the sun of life, our gift from divine creator, restorer. Remember who you are.
All right, get you snap. All right, poet, appreciate that. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyone else want to share what they wrote, what they came up with? Appreciate y'all being here. Can we give some snaps to everyone who just shared? This is Black Lives Matter, and this is taking place at the Black Table Arts Co-op. We're here every 2 weeks. I believe in 2 weeks ago we have Chai and Chill. I believe that's April 3rd, right? 2 weeks, April 3rd, Chai and Chill. So in 2 weeks we're gonna have Chai and Chill. So there's gonna be another event in 2 weeks. And Chai and Chill is a poetry open mic. So it's a poetry open mic dedicated to Black poets. And we have Chai. And we're gonna get the coffee machine working. Yes. And so, yeah, so this is a pay what you can cooperative. You can become a member on our website. That helps us sustain the work. You get key cards. Our business hours are 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. We have a website. Thank you all again so much for coming out on a Saturday and talking about poems and poetry. And thank you all on Zoom for hanging out with us. I'm Kino. It's been a joy to be with you all. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Thank you.
And feel free to hang out and socialize with them. Yeah. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for participating.
Well, and go read my stuff on Facebook and comment and add to it too. You know, I like character.
All right. Absolutely.